Welcome to Your Ultimate Life podcast, where we help you break free from mediocrity and create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. Get your free video series at yourultimatelife.ca.
Hey, welcome to today's episode of Your Ultimate Life. Now, if you're watching the video, and I hope you are, my voice is going to get a little further away here for a sec, but you see this picture. Now, this picture is a very foreboding picture. Looks like a broken stone bridge that goes out into who knows where. And there's a dude sitting, with his knees up and his arms around his knees and his head down in a total defeatist posture. And the whole picture is cloudy and, grayish, brown, gray, and it just has the feeling of a pile of despair. Now, I don't normally like to put pictures up here like this because this podcast is about creating your ultimate life. Now, as I record this, it's not going to be broadcast until toward the end of September, or the middle, I guess. But I just got back from an event in Phoenix where it was called the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And the event was marvelous. It was full of world-class presenters, academics, people who had experienced near-death, and I learned all kinds of new acronyms. There's STE, a spiritually transformative experience. There's OBE, out-of-body experience. I've had both of those, spiritually transformative experiences and out-of-body experiences. There's NDE, which is, for me at least, the best well-known near-death experience. There's something called SDE, which is shared death experience, where someone is close or with someone when they pass and their spirit almost goes with them or does for a little. And some of the stories I heard were just amazing. And some of the academics and the research about people that had experienced some of these things and what happened to them, it was just amazing, astounding. Oh, there's also ADC, after-death communication. Now, you know what's funny? You and I both know there is a spirit in us. We know that this body isn't all there is. We know that we get nudges from our higher self or from the divine, from God. We know that there are spirits. They had stories of spirit guides. And, I never thought about that word spirit guides, but since my father passed away in, I think, 1986 or 87, I can't remember now. I'd have to think about it. I'm not going to have you wait while I think. But 86 or 87, when he was 66 years old and a half, so it would have been 87, June of 87, a week after Father's Day. Since that time, unbidden and without thinking about it, I have distinctly and profoundly had the experience of feeling his presence for a reason. Not just he's here hanging out, looking over my shoulder, but doing something. Ideas, thoughts, feelings that have come and accompanied by the idea, the feeling, the clear certainty that they come from him. And I've had other experiences also where I knew people were in the room. Invisible, spiritual people, but I knew they were in the room. So we know those things happen. And the after-death communication was where there was some piece of communication from a person who had passed. And they verify these. Here's how they verify them. That either someone else was there in the room, and it isn't ghosts appearing, but it is, some kind of utterance that the person says, wow, I just heard this, and they say a thing. But it's always something that nobody knew. Like, for example, the location. One story was the location of a key to a particular safe, and no one knew where the key was. And then it was revealed to this person from the dead guy. And sure enough, there it was. And, the location of whatever was in the safe, I don't even know, papers or something. But just those kinds of things. So there's more acronyms, but those are the ones that I can remember right now. My point isn't the acronyms My point is the amount of research, regular academic research that's going on into these things. And think about yourself. I think the reason is because we all wonder, what is there later? Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? I mean, those are the age-old questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? And, if you take the view that we're accidents, we just showed up accidentally as a result of some whack job lightning strike, some eons ago and all that sort of thing, then none of this matters to you and none of it makes any sense. And what really goes off the rails is the horrific injustice of this life. When you realize the truth, which is there is more, we came from somewhere, we're here for a reason, and we're going somewhere, then the things that happen here in this short time frame don't matter as much, not anywhere near as much. The idea that we have to somehow extract justice for everything that we imagine was injustice disappears, because there is a much larger cosmic scale of things. And that allows us to not run around and feel like we have to be the arbiters of justice and extract it. Anyway, that's a whole episode by itself. The reason I'm talking about this is because I spoke on Friday afternoon, a little late afternoon, 5:15 to 6:15, and I had been assigned the second largest room. Now, there was a big, large ballroom, and then there was a second room and a third and a fourth. There were 4 rooms, and each one gets progressively smaller. The room that I was assigned, I was given the opportunity to speak in the second largest room, which had, I think, 250 chairs, but it was nowhere near full. There were lots of folks there, but not 250. But anyway, my point is this. I spoke about the topic we're going to talk about today, learned helplessness, which is, I asked AI to give me this picture that's in the background to depict in grayscale and sepia the idea of learned helplessness. And so then there's this dude sitting on the bridge, just like that, bent over in this sort of defeatist attitude, and everything is gray and foggy, and it portrays exactly that feeling. And I didn't talk about learned helplessness very long, just to acknowledge that it exists, and got some show of hands of, people who have felt completely defeated and like there's nothing we can do at a given time about things. And my point in raising that was to raise what we're going to talk about today. Do you have some degree of learned helplessness? Like, I want you to think about how we develop. We're born, we are completely helpless. We're dependent on someone to change diapers and give us food and whatever. And if we don't have those things, sometimes little infants die. When it's less severe, then they might be malnourished. If their physical needs aren't taken care of, cold, hot, diaper changes and stuff, your skin gets infected and those kinds of things. And I'm going to, move up the ladder. Most of the people that are listening to this are in the US, Canada, and other English-speaking countries, India and Australia and so forth. And people take care in some rudimentary way of infants. And if they don't, then we have social systems that step in when they know and, put them somewhere else. And the foster care system is atrocious, and there's all kinds of negative things that happen there. And I know that because when Joy and I were in Phoenix, we got involved in that, and we did respite care for foster parents, and we had considered adopting some. And so we were very involved, and we had lots of those kinds of placement kids in our home and in our lives for a time. So we're familiar with it, and I speak with knowledge. We had to take a bunch of training and so forth. But anyway, when you're helpless as an infant, that's a physical reality and an emotional reality. Your encouragement and everything else comes from outside. When that doesn't happen, severe, anxiety and depression and attachment disorder and all kinds of other things, I'm not even going to pretend to name, but they become part of your life as an infant and then as a toddler and growing up. Now, beyond that, let's go to a place where, the infant is taken care of for the most part or completely. All the needs, physical and sort of spiritual or emotional needs are met, and they're not in any danger. You don't have any helplessness. You learn to walk at one or somewhere in that neighborhood. And, an infant, toddler tries and crashes and, gets some encouragement. But I mean, they do it and do it and do it and do it until they learn and they go and they get going. Somewhere along the line, maybe it's brought on by the terrible twos where, a child is trying to figure out how much independence they have and what they can do and rejects the idea of being told what to do and, throws tantrums and things. And then on into preschool or, if you go to preschool or school, there's the idea that you now suddenly are not okay. Before that, when you are helpless, nobody tells you it's not okay to pee your pants because you just do that. But somewhere in that early, developmental stage, 4, 5, 3, 6, all through that time, you suddenly get introduced to the idea that you're not okay, that something you're doing is wrong. And sometimes, in fact, quite often, that's given or presented with the idea that, we're raising a child, we're teaching them how to get along. And I'm putting air quotes around that because most of the raising that gets done is lousy. Frankly, it's quite lousy. My upbringing was atrocious. I had all my physical needs met and food and clothing and diapers and everything else. But starting at as early as I can remember, at 4 and 5 and 6, I started getting a lot of physical punishment that turned into abuse, violent, unacceptable abuse, in the notion of trying to make me be a good boy and do what I'm supposed to do and beat the crap out of me when I don't. Now, I'm not saying I had anything worse than anyone else. I'm quite sure there are people that have much, much worse things than I did. That's not the point. We have experiences at home, at school, with friends that teach us we're not okay. And until that is counteracted in that very early stage when we're sponges, we just soak all that up. And then we define ourselves. We create our ego, which is that sort of protective thing that is just filled with this need to be okay. To do whatever it is to fit in, to be okay, to get praised, to get patted on the head, approved, that sort of thing. And unless we get, signals and input that we are to develop ourselves and that it's not only okay, but desirable as individuals, that we figure out who we are, what we want to do, what gifts and talents we have and so forth. That mostly isn't done. Now, it's interesting because my precious angel wife, Joy, she had what could be described, at least how she remembers it, as the ideal upbringing. She was encouraged to do everything. She was engaged in all kinds of sports and creative things, from skating and dancing. And, just recently we went out to the Ukrainian Independence Day celebration. I mentioned that the other day, I think. And there was a Ukrainian dance troupe called Chetamash. And they have been around for decades. And they are world traveled and world famous, and they're very good. They performed. And Joy was part of that. So she was raised with dance and skating, and, she took coaching in college, and she worked with kids, and every piece of thing she was interested in, silk painting and all kinds of stuff. She was encouraged to follow everything and provided with the opportunity to go try this, go try that, figure out who you are and what you want to be. And her skills, because of that, are amazing. She can do, I don't even know how many things. She ended up with a degree in art and design from the university here in Edmonton, University of Alberta, but did all kinds of other things, studied architecture and, some computer stuff and everything. And so she was encouraged in all those ways, and she's turned out to be a well-skilled, well-rounded, capable, intelligent, resilient, powerful woman. Now, I'm not going to tell the story here. I did at this conference of how Joy came into my life 17 years ago. It was a miracle. It was a miracle organized and orchestrated from the divine. But we all get those, sometimes little and sometimes big. They don't come when we ask for them. They don't come when we demand them. They don't come when we think they ought to, but they do come. Sometimes they come in the form of small nudges, ideas, thoughts, intuition, inspiration. And sometimes they come really loud, like the one that happened in August of 2007, August, September, and October, over a period of 2 months, from mid-August to mid-October for me. It changed the course of everything in my life, but only because I listened. See, here's the thing. Even when those major things happen, we can call them accidents and get mad or dismiss them, or we can listen to the invitation that's contained in them. And that's the key. So let's go back to having learned helplessness. Somewhere along that way, we get the idea that if we don't take care of something, somebody else will. And that comes from, parents that hover too much and go in and do everything. It comes from the idea or the experiences of being bailed out of every problem. It comes from the idea or experience of lying a lot and getting away with it. I did that. I lied. I learned to lie really well growing up, and I got quite good at it. So much so that sometimes I didn't even know what the truth was. And that made me a great liar, but a miserable person, because I didn't know what the truth was. I knew what I had to do and say to get control of every situation. Well, that's awful, because then you're out of touch with reality. But through those experiences, we learn the idea that we really are helpless. We can't control others. All these bad things happen to me: bad friends, bad teachers, bad bosses, bad health breaks, bad financial breaks, bad upbringing, bad parents, those things happened. And so I'm hard done by, and I can't do anything about it. And then as long as I stay, or you stay, or any of us, we stay in that place of having had those things. And you know what? Every single person breathing air has them. Boatloads, little ones, big ones, medium ones, all the time. When things don't go your way. Thinking back now, 15 years, 16 years to the real estate and banking crisis in 2008, I still hear people talk about having lost everything then and never having recovered. Garbage. They may not be back to whatever money they had, but the idea that happened to me and therefore I'm dead is learned helplessness. If you created something before, you can again. Now, the things may not line up the same, et cetera, but the idea that you just, throw up your hands, either actually or metaphorically, and swim in the cesspool of learned helplessness means you are unable, and you will always be unable, to create your ultimate life. Now, this whole podcast and show and everything we're doing is about creating a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. The operative word is creating. I am creating this life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. Let's get more detailed. It doesn't depend on anyone else. Think about that. When you were little and played in the mud or built some clay things or your ability to be happy didn't depend on anyone else. You could do that all by yourself. Now, you may think, well, that's stupid. I didn't know better, but it's exactly the same. You have, I have, we have together the ability to be happy right now in this moment. I don't care what's going on. I can be happy. It doesn't change what's happened to me, but you know what it changes? It changes my ability to deal with it. It changes my creativity. It changes my focus. It changes my insight. It changes my accessibility to intuition and guidance. One of the things I learned from my death experience in 2018 was that the divine is constantly speaking intuition to us. constantly sending out the signals of guidance. And you say, well, if that's true, how come I don't know what to do? Well, you don't know what to do because you're not listening. At least that was my experience. And many hundreds, maybe even thousands of people I've worked with. And here's the thing that gets in the way of listening. We think the guidance or the answer has to be a certain way. So it's not coming like I want, therefore it's not here. That is learned helplessness. If it doesn't show up how I imagine it, it doesn't count. I call that the MST disease, manner, size, and time. So if the guidance or the breaks or the opportunities don't show up in the manner or the way I want them to, or they're not the size I wanted this to turn into $10,000 and it turned into $1,000. Or I wanted $1 million and it was 100. It doesn't matter. The size is wrong, so see, something's wrong. I didn't get what I was trying to create. Or most of all, the timing. We have the idea that the universe, the divine, operates on our timeline according to our playbook, and we all know it doesn't. The question is, how frustrated and negative do we get when it doesn't? I got an email this morning from a good friend of mine who's also a coach and works with a lot of sports figures. He said, he was quoting someone else, but he sends out these emails every day, and I love it. If I don't have a problem, in fact, if I love what is right now in my life, what is the grand description of everything that is exactly as it is. From the weather to my bank account to my physical health to my relationships, everything is a certain way at this moment. If I love what is, then what is exactly what I want. And you might still want to change things. Of course we do. We want to build this. We want to create more of that. Maybe things aren't happening the way I thought they were going to yesterday. But if I make a choice, I want you to hear this out. Don't dismiss this. If I make a choice to just love what is, what it does is it gets rid of all these negative thoughts and feelings in my heart. It gets rid of all this anger and bitterness and recrimination at God or at universe or at somebody else or at the banks or at the economy or at the government or even at myself. I failed. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better, this, that, and the other. If you get rid of all that and just make a choice to love, first be okay with what is, and then the next step up is to love it. All that negativity goes away, and it isn't just about being Pollyanna and having a smile. When that negativity goes away, you and I, we get more creative. So I'm fine. In fact, I'm more than fine. I love what is right this minute. Cool. Now I'm in a position to create more powerfully because I'm not filled with this nagging, anger, fear, frustration. I'm barely going to make it. I'm going to starve. I'm going to whatever. I didn't get those clients. I didn't get the tax refund I thought I was going to, whatever it is. This big, long litany of things, it all is a time suck, energy suck, drain on you. So learning to love what is not only a thing that removes all this negativity from us, it also makes us more creative and powerful. Now, if you find yourself, the question for today was, do you have this disease of learned helplessness? And the answer is you absolutely do, guaranteed. The only question is, how bad is the infection? Now, learned helplessness is the idea that you can't do anything about your situation. And that is from your bank account to your success, your physical health, your weight, your relationships, your fears, learning whatever to speak on stage or launching this career, getting a promotion at work, or just being happy day to day, hour to hour, just being happy. When you blame anything outside of you at all, anything outside of you for your state of being, you are living in learned helplessness. You might be mad at me for saying that. I don't care. It's true. Now, it isn't enough to simply say, okay, fine. I hate you, Kellen, for saying that, but I realize now I'm living in a bit of learned helplessness again, which is the idea that I can't change those things in my circumstance. I can't change them. Any degree that I have or you have of that thought is learned helplessness, because you always can do something. And the first thing to do is start with your language, your internal dialogue, your choice about how to view the situation. So if I get a cut and I ignore it and it starts to hurt a little bit, and I deny the fact that it looks like it's probably getting infected, it gets worse. It certainly doesn't get better. If I look at it and say, wow, that's getting infected, I better treat it, and I pop it open and squeeze the pus out if there is some, and get some peroxide or alcohol or whatever and doctor it and maybe Band-Aid on it, then I improve the chances to get better. If I also decide I'm not going to worry about it, I'm not going to worry about 1 minute or 1 second, I'm just going to move forward with what I'm doing anyway, even though it's a little painful, I'm another notch up. So that's not silly, but simple example of something we've all experienced. So here, that is exactly the same with learned helplessness. The minute you hear your language blaming, you're operating in learned helplessness. You're operating with the idea that it's not on you. Now, I'm not saying we control what other people do or the weather or the economy or anything else. What we control is the instant it enters into us. Our thought, our feeling, our circumstance, our pocketbook, our bank account, the minute it enters into our universe, we are in control. Not of what it does, but of how we look at it. Step 1. Step 2, how we create from it. Arguing with reality means you're always going to lose 100% of the time, because what is. And when you choose to love what is, you are more powerful in creating. So loving what is and then asking a very simple question. What can I create from this? Now you can scream for a minute and say, this sucks. Okay, fine. But be done in 60 seconds. And then say, okay, I'm going to create from this mess, which I love. So that's the first thing. Your attitude, your internal language, internal dialogue, how you're describing the situation to yourself, how much responsibility you're laying on others. Forget it. Who cares? The only question that matters is what can you or I create from this. Anything else is living in this learned helplessness, and you're free to live there, but it's very destructive. It leads to depression and lack of action and another disease, which we'll talk about next episode, called addiction to mediocrity. It might lead to actual addictions and numbing and other kinds of crap that are also all very destructive. So the first thing you look at is your language. How are you describing things? The next thing is, and simultaneously, is your attitude about it. We talked before about an optimist looks at any situation and says, there's got to be a way to fix this. A pessimist looks at exactly the same situation and says, I'm screwed. No way, I'm dead, I can't do anything. Okay? Now, the third thing, so you have your language, you have your habits, and this is a place to check in. Do you habitually blame? Do you habitually let outside things depress you, frustrate you, slow you down, derail you, blow you away? Those questions matter, and matter a ton. Your attitude, your habits, and your language are 100% under your control. And I can promise you right now, when you look at your own language internally and externally and what you blame and all the rest, you'll know whether or not you have this learned helplessness. And getting over it is a matter of noticing your language, adjusting it, noticing your attitude, making new choices, and then asking that question, given what is here, what is it that I can create, even a little? What can I do? Moving in the direction I want to go. So the important thing to take away today is you have some learned helplessness. Minimize it, eliminate it. Learn to love what is. You can't change it anyway, except by your own actions. And your actions are more powerful when they are directed and focused with a positive attitude, with the idea that, yes, you can do something, and you are in control. Now, I invite you to do something for me today, if you're willing, and that is to share this podcast with 2 people. Are you willing to do that for me? The second thing I'd love is if you liked it, would you leave a review? Tell people that you liked it. The reason is because that helps me move toward my goal of 250 million people. My goal is to help you, 250 million of you, create your own life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. I know that it's possible because I live there. I didn't. I can look right clearly across the battlefield behind me and see every step I had to take. No one can keep you from creating joy and living positively, prosperously with your own purpose and creating for yourself your ultimate life.
Open your heart and this time around, stand.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope that you take it deeply into your heart and decide for yourself how you can create anything you desire. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback and topic suggestions. Until tomorrow, this is Your Ultimate Life with host Kellen Flukiger.
Stand with your heart.